Hey there, how's it going everybody? In this video, we'll be adding the ability for users to add posts that will show up on the homepage. So in this series so far, we've been using some dummy data, but now we'll actually be able to get rid of that and display actual posts created by the users. And we'll also add in the ability to update and delete these posts as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so first of all, we're going to need to create a page where users can create a post, and we should be getting used to this process by now. So first, we can create a route where a user can write a new post. So I'm in my routes file here, and if we go to the bottom, then we can create a new route. And now I'll create a route for a new post. So I will copy one of these routes as a starting point and paste this in down here at the bottom. And I will call this route post/new, and I will call the function here new_post. And creating a new post will be a route that requires the user to be logged in. So let's add that login required decorator. So right underneath here, I can add in that login required decorator. And just like the other routes, we're going to want to render a template for this route. So I'll render a template that doesn't exist yet, but we'll create it in just a second. So I'm going to copy this line here and paste it in to our route. And now I'll change this up a little bit for this specific route. So the template that we want to render, I will just call this template create_post. And the title we will have for this page is new post. And then we'll just close that out. Okay, so now we can create this template. So within our templates directory, I'm going to right click here and go to new file, and I'll create a new file called create_post.html. We want it to match the template that we just rendered here. So I will create that. And within our template, we'll want the same starting point as our other templates. So we'll extend from the layout.html, which will give us the overall layout of the website. And then we'll begin the content block. So I'm just going to grab this from the about page since that's fairly stripped down, and then paste it in here and get rid of this h1 tag. Okay, so that gives us a bare bones template to work with. And lastly, the content that we want on this page is going to be a form for posting new posts. And first, we have to create that form, and it's going to be a simple one with just a couple of fields. So let's open up our forms.py file here. And at the bottom of this file, let's create a new form. So I will call this form, and remember these are classes. I will call this post form. And remember, we want to import from Flask form. And for a post, we're just going to have two fields. We're going to have a title, and that is going to be a string field. And then the label that we want for this is simply title. And now we're also going to want some validators. So we pass in our list of validators, but it's only going to be one. We're going to pass in a data required validator because every post has to have a title. And the second field is going to be the post content, which will actually be a text area field. And we haven't used a text area field yet, so we need to import that. So here from the top, where we're importing our other fields, I can add on a text area field to that import. So now I'll copy that, and we can go back to our form and create our content field. So I'll say content is equal to text area field. And now the title that we want for this is just going to be content. And the validators that we're going to pass in here is just the same. We want the data required validator because every post has to have some content. And lastly, we need a submit button to post this to our route. So I will say submit is equal to submit field. And this is just like our other forms. And the title that I want on this submit button is just going to be post. So we can save that. And that is going to be it for this form. So now let's create an instance of this form in our route and pass it in to our create post template. So back in our routes, we now need to import this form so that we can create an instance of it. So we'll go back to the top where we are importing all of our forms, and onto the end here, I will just add that post form import. And now let's create an instance of that in our route and pass it into our template. So within our route, I'll say form is equal to post form, and then we can pass this into our template simply by saying form is equal to form. And this should be becoming a little more familiar now since we've done this a couple of times. And now, since we're going to allow a form to post back to this route, we're going to need to accept a post request. So up here in our accounts route, I'm just going to grab where we are allowing these different methods, and then I'm going to paste this in to our post route. So now we are accepting GET and POST requests to this route. And let's also go ahead and put in our usual conditional to validate the form when it's posted, and also how we want to handle that. So let's put in this if form.validate on submit conditional, and we'll put this right below our form in our new post route. And for now, let's just add a Flask message that their post has been created and then redirect them back to the home page. And we'll actually put in the logic for adding this post to the database in just a minute. But for now, we'll just say a flash message here, and we'll say your post has been created with an exclamation point. And let's pass in a category of success, which is going to be our Bootstrap class for that alert. And now let's redirect them to the home page. So we'll say return, redirect, and we're going to redirect them to URL 4 and pass in the home route. So now let's actually add this form to our create post template. And this will be similar to our other forms. So I'm going to grab a snippet from one of our other routes just to get us started. So I'm going to open up the login template here. And I'm going to copy our entire div of content section that wraps our form. And I'm going to paste this in to our create post route. So I'll paste that in and fix these indentations here. And now we'll change this around to match the fields that we need in our post form. So first, I will change the legend here. So the legend at the top of our field, I'm going to change this to new post. And now I will change these form group divs here to match our current post form. So in our first form group, we want to change this to be the title field for our post. So instead of email, I'm going to use this multi-select tool here and change all of these to title. If you don't have a multi-cursor tool in your editor, then you can just use a find and replace for that. Okay, so now all of these in this form group should read form.title, so that's good. And now down here, we'll replace this password with the content. So we want this to be our content field. So I will highlight all of those up until the next div and replace that with content. So now everything in this form group should be form.content. And lastly, in our login form, we had this checkbox here for remember me. We don't need that anymore, so we can just get rid of this entire div. It's just a couple of lines there. So we will delete that. And then after this, we have our submit button, and that is still called submit in that form, so we can leave that. But we don't want this forgot password link here after our submit button. So we'll get rid of that as well. So that should be all the changes that we need to make to this post form. Now, just a reminder, I know that it can be hard to keep up with small changes like these when you're following along with a video, but if you think that you may have messed something up or just want to grab the completed version of this file from this video, then I do have this code available in the description section below. Okay, so that should do it for this template and for our route and for the form. But now finally, let's add a link to this create post route in our navigation bar so that logged in users can get to this route easily. And the navigation bar is in our layout template. So let's open up our layout.html template, and I will scroll down here to our navigation, and we can see our conditional here. This is where the links that get displayed whenever a current user is authenticated or is logged in. So I'm going to copy this account route here and paste in a route right above it. And now we'll change this to link to the new post route. So this will be new underscore post, and the text for that link will just be new post. So we can save that. So now let's open up our application in a browser and make sure that all of these changes look good so far. So first, make sure that all of the files that we have modified are saved, and they do look saved on my end. So now we can start up our application by pulling up our terminal and running python run.py. And we can see that we don't get any errors and our development server is running, so that's good. So I will pull up the browser and reload our page. And I am currently logged in, and we can see that we have this new post route here. So if I go to this new post route, then we can see that we have this new post form. Now, if you weren't logged in, then you'll have to log in first before you can see this new post route. So now if I hit post on this new post route, then we can see our validation is working. It says that these fields are required. And now let's just fill these in with some dummy values. So I will say blog 1 and then blog 1 content. And now let's post this new post form. And now we can see that we get redirected to our homepage with our alert message here that our post has been created. But our homepage is currently still using our dummy data from the beginning of this series. So now let's actually save these posts to our database and display those posts on our homepage and delete this old static dummy data that we've been using. So let's go back to our routes and add these posts to the database. So I will pull back up our application and pull up our routes.py file here. So to actually add this post to our database, it's going to be similar to when we added a user to our database, but it's actually going to be easier than that because we don't need to hash passwords or anything like that. So we can simply just say post is equal to post, and then we can set our fields equal to what is coming in from our form. So title is equal to form.title.data, and the content is going to be equal to form.content.data. And now we also need to specify the author for this post. Now I'm going to use author is equal to current user. And let me spell that right. Now I use the back reference of author to set the author of that post instead of setting the user ID. And that choice is up to you. I think that it looks more clean this way. But now that we have that post created, we can simply add that post to our database by saying db.session.add, and we want to add that post. And now we can commit those changes to the database. So we can say db.session.commit. Okay, so that will add the post to the database, and then we still have our flashed message and are redirecting them to the home page. So let's change our homepage route so that we actually see these real posts instead of the dummy post that we have right now. So first of all, I'm going to remove the dummy data from the top of our file so that we are sure that we're no longer using that. So I'm going to just delete all of that dummy data that we were using, which was just a list of dictionaries. And now within our home page, which is here at the top, we can see that we were just passing in that dummy data into our template as this post variable. So let's create a new post variable within our home route that is set to our actual post. So this is going to be super easy. Right above our return statement there, we'll simply say post is equal to post.query.all to grab all of those posts from the database. And as long as our dummy data had the same attributes as our model, then that should be the only thing that we need to do in order to grab those posts. Now, I do think that we might need to change something with how the post is displayed, but let's see how that worked for now. So I'm going to open up our browser and give this a look, make sure that all of our files have been saved that we changed, and that our web server is still running, and it is. So now I'll reload our homepage, and we can see that we don't have any posts. So now let's add one. So I will add a post, and for the title, I'll just say my first post. And then for the content, I'll just say this is my first post. And I'll actually make this multi-lined here so that we can see what this looks like. So this is very exciting. And I'll change that to be capitalized there. So let's post that. Okay, so when we post that, we can see that it displays on the home page, so that's good. Now, our dummy data wasn't exactly like our real data. It looks like we are printing out the entire user object instead of just the author's username. It also looks like the date is printing out the date and the time instead of just the date. And I don't think we need the exact time for these posts, so we'll just change this to print out only the year, month, and day. It's nice having that exact time of the post in the database, but on the front page, we'll just display the date. So we'll fix those. And it will also be nice to display the user's profile picture with their post as well, like you'd see on other popular sites. And I already have styles for that in our CSS. We just need to add the HTML to our template. So let's go do that. So I will open up our home template. So I'm going to go into our templates and open home.html. So you can see here on line 7, this is where we were printing out that entire user, but we don't want to print out the entire author. We want to print out just the author's username. So instead of post.author, let's do post.author.username. And to display just the date instead of the entire date time, then we can use the strftime datetime method. So right here where we have this date posted, then we can simply, now this is a datetime object, so we can use these datetime methods. So we can simply say strftime and now pass in the formatting that we want. Now you can look up these formatting codes online, but I just happen to know that to display the year, month, and day, that is a capital Y, and we can do a dash, and then a lowercase m, and then a dash, and then a lowercase d. And all of those have percent signs before those. So it should look like that. And if you search that strftime method online, then you can find different values that you can plug in there to display dates in any format that you'd like. Okay, and to display the user's image, I'm going to put in an image tag here with some CSS classes that we added earlier in the series. And I'm just going to add this image right to the top of the article. So right inside the opening article tag there, I'm going to say image, and this image is going to have a class equal to, and I'll set this equal to rounded dash circle, which is a bootstrap class to just round your image. And then I will also set a class here of article dash image, which is a custom class that we added in our main.css. And that's just going to make sure that it has the right sizing and padding and things like that. Now our source is going to be the URL to that user's image. So I can put in our curly braces there to write some code. And now we can say URL for, and this is going to be a URL for our static directory. And within our static directory, the file name will be equal to the profile underscore pics directory. And we will concatenate that with the image of the author who wrote the post. So we can simply say post.author.image underscore file. And we can do that because if we remember, that author is a back reference, which gives us access to that entire user and their attributes. And that image file is an attribute of that user. Okay, so now that we've made those changes, let's save all those and then reload our homepage in the browser to see what these look like. So I'll save those changes and check our development server, and it's still running. So now let's pull back up our homepage and reload this. Okay, so we can see that this looks pretty good. We have our username here instead of that entire user object. Our date is now the year, month, and date instead of the entire time that the post was written. And we also have our author's picture here to the side, so that looks nice. Okay, so now we've got some good functionality for our application. Now, as far as a basic blogging system with multiple users, we've pretty much got this to a good point where it has all of that basic functionality, but there's always going to be more that we can add. So let's keep going and adding some more functionality to this just so we can learn how it's done. So for example, let's say that we wanted to have the ability to update or delete posts. Now, it wouldn't be a very good application if you could only create posts, but you couldn't correct typos or delete the post altogether. So let's see how to do that. So first, let's make a route that takes us to a specific page for a single post. So to do this, we'll go back to our routes. And to do this, we're going to use something that we haven't seen yet. So Flask gives us the ability to add variables within our actual routes. So if we wanted to create a route where the ID of a post is actually part of the route, then we can create a route that looks like this. So let me grab a starting point here, and we can actually put this variable into the URL itself by putting in these angle brackets and then saying post ID. So for example, if the user was to go to post/1, then post ID would be equal to 1. If they were to go to post/2, then post ID would be equal to 2, and so on. So we also need to add that to our route function. So I will just call this route post and pass in that post ID as an argument there. And we can actually make these variables even more specific if we want. So for example, you can specify whether you want to expect that the variable is going to be a string or an integer or something like that. Now we're going to be expecting a post ID, and that's going to be an integer. So we can simply come up here and say int : then post ID. Okay, so now within this route, Now let's fetch this post if it exists. So we'll say post is equal to post.query. And remember, when we're getting something by an ID, we can use the get method. So get, and we'll pass in that post ID as an argument. Now, actually, instead of using this get method, let's instead use a method that we haven't seen yet. Now, instead of using get or first like we've seen before in these videos, this time let's use the method get underscore or underscore 404. Now, this is a convenient method that just says, give me the post with this ID, and if it doesn't exist, then return a 404, which means that the page doesn't exist. But if that post does exist, then let's simply render a template that returns that post. So this template doesn't exist yet, but we'll create it right after we render the template. So I will say return render template, and this will be, we'll call this post.html. And for the title of this one, let's just pass in the title of our post. So I'll say title is equal to post.title. And now let's pass in that post into our template. Okay, and now let's create a template for this. So up in my templates here, we'll create a new file, and we'll call this post.html. And then this will be very similar to our home.html, except it's going to be a single post instead of all of our posts. So I'm going to go to home.html and actually copy all of that and paste it in to our post template. And we'll use this as our starting point, but within here, we won't need to loop over the post since there will only be one. So we can just get rid of this for loop here and also the ending of that for loop, and then fix that indentation. And also, we're not going to need our blog title to be a link anymore. The only reason it is a link on the home page is so that they can link to this page that we're creating now. So we'll just make that an H2 of the post title. So I'm going to remove the link here surrounding the post title. So remove the opening and the closing tags for that anchor tag. But I am going to keep that class that it had on that anchor tag. So I'm going to set the class equal to article-title and save that. Okay, and lastly, we need to actually add the links to this route for the individual post on the home page. So if we pull up the template for the home page right now, if we look at the links for the post title, then we can see that we're just using this # for the link location, which means that the link doesn't actually go anywhere. But we want this to go to the page for that individual post. So which would be the post route that we just created with the ID of the post. So to do that, we can add in our double curly braces like we are used to, and then we can say URL for, and this is going to be a URL for, and we called this route, we called that route post. So this will be a URL for post. And now we also need to post in that post ID with that route. So we can say that the post ID for that route is going to be equal to our post.id. So as we're looping through all of our posts on our home page, once it gets to this point, it's going to print out the post title, and that is going to be an anchor tag. And the location for that anchor tag is going to be the URL for that post. And we're going to set this post ID equal to the current post.id. So let's save this and actually see what this looks like on the website. So I've got all of my files saved here. Let's open back up our web server, and we need to restart this. So I will run that. We can see that our development server is running. So let me rerun the home page. Now, first, let me add one more post from a different user so that we can see multiple posts on the home page. So I'm going to log out of my current user, and then I'll log in with another user that I created in a previous video. And that user was testuser@demo.com. And I believe that the password I used was testing. Okay, so now I'm logged in as that user. So now let me go to new post, and the title of this will just be a second post. And then we will have some content here that this is a post from a different user. So let me post that. So now we can see that we have 2 posts here on our homepage. So now if I hover over the link for one of our posts, then I know that this is a little small for you to see on video, but in the bottom left of Chrome, it shows us where this link will take us. And it currently says that it's going to our post route with a /1. So that is linking to the post with an ID of 1. So if I click on that, then it actually took me to the URL of /post/1. And if I hover over the title, we can see that this is no longer a link. So if I go back to the home page and then click on the second post, then it's the same thing. It takes me to post/2, and it's the page for this specific post. Now, if I try to go to a post that doesn't exist, then I should get a 404 error, and that means that the post with that ID doesn't exist. So if instead I try to go to post, /10 and go there, then we can see that we get this not found error. And that's good because that route wouldn't exist unless we had a post with that ID. Okay, so now we're able to add posts and see them on our homepage, but let's also add the ability to update and delete posts. So let's create a new route that displays a form to update a post. So let's go back to our homepage here, and now let's bring back up our application and go to our routes. And now I'm going to create a new route here that is the post ID followed by a /update. And it's going to be similar to the one that we just created. So I'm going to just copy that as a starting place. Now, right after the post ID, I will say update. And now we need to change the function name of this route because we can't have the same function name for multiple routes. So I will call this update_post. And this is going to be a route that requires a login because if you're trying to update a post, then it means that you have to log in first. So let's put in that login required decorator there. And now let's do the same thing that we did for our specific post page. We will get a post with that ID, and if it doesn't exist, then we will return a 404. Okay, so first, we want to make sure that only the user who wrote this post can update it. So let's put that check in place. So I'll say if post.author is not equal to the current user, then we're going to do an abort and pass in a 403 there. Now, this is the first time that we've actually manually aborted and returned an error response. Now, this 403 response is the HTTP response for a forbidden route. And we'll customize these error pages in a future video to make them look a little nicer. Now, we haven't actually imported that abort function yet, so let's do that. So that is just going to be from Flask. So up here at the top, where we have our other Flask imports, I will just add this abort import onto the end there. So now let's go back down to the bottom. Okay, so if the current user is the author of the post, then let's go ahead and create our form and render a template. Now, the form that we use will just be the same as our previous post form. So let's just reuse that. So right underneath here, I will say that the form is going to be equal to post form and create an instance of that. And the template will pretty much be the same as our current post template with just one small difference. So for now, let's render that template and see what it looks like. So I'll actually just grab it from here. So and that is our post template. I want to grab our create post template here. So I will copy that and paste that in here in our update post route. And instead of a new post as being the title, I will make that update post as being the title. So let's open this in our browser and see what this looks like right now. So I've got everything saved, and in my terminal, I'm going to restart our development server and then reload our browser here. So first, let me log out as our test user and log back in as the Corey M. Schafer user that we created earlier. So I will log in there. So first, let me go to the link of the second post that I wrote as test user and try to update that post. So if I go to this route, then we can see that we are at post /2. Now I'm going to add a /update onto that route. And we can see that we get a forbidden response when trying to do that. And that is because we did that 403 abort. But if I go back to our home page and try to update the post that I created, so I'll go to the first post here and then go to /update on that post number 1. Then we can see that we get our form. Now, there are a couple things that I want to change here. So first, we want the title and content to be populated with the content of the existing post that we're updating. And also, I want the form legend to say update post instead of new post. So to change this, let's go back to our routes. So first of all, I'm not going to create an entirely separate template just to update the legend of that form. I'm just going to create a legend value that we pass into each template. So for our update route, I will just add this on to the end here, and I'm going to go to a new line here for this form, and we can pass in a legend, and we'll set that equal to update post and save that. And I'll copy this and add this to our new post as well. So I will go up here to our new post route and put this on a separate line as well and add that legend. But for the legend, we're going to call this new post. And now we can just display that legend within our create post template. So I'm going to open up that template. Now we could probably have named that template better since now it's being used to create and update post, but that's not a big deal. We're not going to worry about that. So here within create post, if we go up to our legend, now I'm simply going to use the double curly braces there and use that legend argument that we passed in. Okay, and we also wanted the form to be populated with the current post title and content on our update page. Now, we've seen this before in our account page with our account info, so it's going to be similar. So if I go back here to our update route, then right under where we are initializing this form, we can simply say that the form.title.data is going to be equal to the post.title. And we can do the same thing for the content. So we'll say form.content.data, set that equal to the post content. Okay, so those changes should handle changing the legend and filling in the form with the current post data. So now let's also add in the logic to update the post if the form validates. So as usual, we need to accept post requests to any of these routes that we want to submit a form to. So we can just copy that from one of our existing routes. So I will copy those methods and paste that in there. And now we can handle the logic for when that form is submitted. So as we've seen before, we can say if form.validate on submit, and then within here, if that form was valid, then we can update our post. So we can simply say post.title is going to be equal to the form.title.data, and the same with the post content. So I will copy and paste that line, but change both of those to content. So post content is equal to form.content.data. And now we can simply commit those changes. So I can say db.session.commit. Now you might notice whenever we make those changes, we don't need to do a db.session.add because those are already in the database. That we're just updating something that is already in the database. Okay, so now after we commit those changes, let's do a flash message to the user to let them know. So we can flash a message that says your post has been updated, and then we can pass in our style, and for this we'll do a success style, and then we can redirect back to that post route for that specific post. So I will say return, and that will be a redirect, and that'll be a redirect for URL 4 and the URL for our post route. And we want this to be the post ID of our current post. So we'll say post ID is equal to post.id. And while we're at it, let's also move here where we're setting the form data. Let's put it in its own conditional like we did in our account page. And we want to make sure that that's populated when it's a GET request. So I will add on to our conditional here and say if request.method. And we will say if that method is equal to a GET request, then we want to populate that form with those values. Okay, so that should do it for updating our post. So let's see if it worked. So we have everything saved, and let's make sure our web server is still running, and it is. And let's pull up our site. And now I'll try to update a post that I have created. So I'm on this post page, and I'm going to go to /update for that post. And we can see that now our legend is correct. We have update post, and our title and our content is populated. So now I'll say my first updated post, and this is my first updated post as the content, and then we can submit that. And we can see that that worked, and we got redirected back to the page for this specific post. And also we have our Flask message here that our post has been updated. Oh, actually that says update. Let me change that really fast. Updated in that Flash message. Okay. And if I go back to our home route, then we can see that that does stay there. So that did update that post permanently. Okay, so we're just about finished up. Now we just need to add the ability to delete a post for a user. So before creating the route to delete a post, let's actually add the links for the update and delete routes to our template. Now I want to do this first because for our delete route, I want to add an extra confirmation step to make sure that the user really wants to delete their post and make it hard for them to do it by accident. So the update and delete links will be included in the single post template. So let's open up that template, and we called that post.html. And remember, this is the page when we're viewing a single post. And we'll put those update and delete links right here in this article metadata section of our post. And I'll put those after the username and date. Now you only want to show these links if the post belongs to the current user. So we can put in a code block here, so curly braces and %signs, and we can say if post.author is equal to the current underscore user, then we can end this if block here, end if, and now within this if statement, then let's put in a div with our links. And I'm going to include some bootstrap classes, so bear with me while I type this out. So I'm going to put in a div here, and within the div, I'm going to put an anchor tag for our update link. And for this update link, before I update the href, I'm going to give it some classes. So I'll set the classes equal to, and I want this to be a bootstrap button, and specifically a bootstrap button dash secondary. And also I'm going to make it small. So that's btn-sm. And also I want to give it some spacing. So I'm going to give it a margin of 1. So m-1. So that href for the update link, we've seen this before, so we can use our double curly braces, and that is going to be URL 4. And that's going to be a URL 4, and we called this route, if I go back to my routes here, we called this update post. So that's going to be the URL for update post. And remember, we need to pass in the post ID as well. So I can say post underscore ID is equal to, let me scroll over here a bit, and that is going to be equal to the post.id. So we can save that. Now we also want to be able to delete a post. Now this is going to be a little different here. So I'm actually, instead of making this an anchor tag, I'm going to make this a button. So I'll say a button is equal to the type of button, and then we're going to pass in a class here, and the class is going to be similar. It's going to be a btn. And specifically, I want this to be a bootstrap class with btn-danger, which will make it a red button. I want that to be small as well, so btn-sm, and we'll give that the same margin, m-1. And we want this button to say delete. Now, when it comes to deleting their post, I want the user to confirm that they actually want to delete that post. So I'm going to use a bootstrap modal. Now, that's why I used a button instead of a link. And I'm actually going to grab this directly from the Bootstrap website so that I don't mistype anything. So if you were to search Bootstrap modal, then you will be able to find this page too. So I'm going to go to my browser and open up this modal page. And within here, you want to go to their live demo section. And I'm just going to copy the data toggle and data target part of their button. This is what actually toggles the modal. So I will copy that, and then I will paste this in to my button on my page here. So I will add that in. Now, instead of this data target pointing to example modal, let's actually change this to delete modal. So now let's go back to their website. And now I can actually grab all of the code for this modal and paste it into the end of my content section. Now, I guess I should show you what a modal is first if you don't know what one is. If I do the launch demo modal here, then you can see that it's just something that pops up on your screen and kind of darkens everything in the background and gives some text and some options here. And this is where we'll have our close and delete so that we can be sure that we want to actually delete that post and put in a delete confirmation there. So that's what that looks like. So I will copy this entire modal section here and I will paste this into the end of our content section. So that is going to be after our article and right before the end of the content block. So let me make sure that that indentation is correct and I'll save that. Now remember that we changed the data target on our button to be delete modal and not example modal. So everywhere that this says example modal, we want to change this to delete modal. So I'm going to do a multi-select here and copy all of the parts that say example modal. And I think that I highlighted 3 here. And I'm going to change all of those to be delete modal instead. So before going any further with this deletion button, let's open this up in our browser and make sure that we got all of this correct so far. So I will save all of that and we can open up our server here and make sure that it's still running, and it is. So I'll go back to our page and try to go to our page for one of our posts. And we can see that if it is a post that we have written, then we have our update and delete links here. Now, if I click on update, then it takes us to the update route for that specific post. And if I go back and click on delete, then we can see that it pops up that example modal with the modal title and our options here. Now, for now, I'm just going to close that down. So that's working well for now. Now we just need to modify that modal to confirm the deletion of our post. And while we're changing things with that template, I kind of don't like that this has a margin on the left side here. So I think I'm going to update this update button here and only have a margin on the top and bottom and not on the left and right. So let's open up that post.html template, and I'll go back up here to our button. And for this update anchor tag here, I'm going to change this M1, and I'm just going to have that be an MT, which is margin top, and an MB, which is margin bottom. And I'll set both of those to 1. And I'll leave the complete margin on the delete button. Okay, so now let's change this modal so that it is more in line with what we are trying to do. So I'm going to go down here to our modal, and we have a comment here for where this starts. So now the title, let's change this modal title, and we'll just change this to delete post with a question mark. And we can completely get rid of this modal body because there's no additional information that we need. All we need is to display this delete post part. And now for the 2 buttons that we have on our modal window, we'll leave those close buttons there. So we'll leave this secondary close button here. Now, instead of having this save changes button here, let's completely get rid of that. And we are going to instead make that a form with a submit button. So we can simply add in a form here, and the form is going to have an action equal to an empty string, which will post it back to our current route. We will set the method equal to post. And now within our form, we're simply just going to have a submit button with a value of delete for deleting our post. So this will be an input, and the type will be submit. And I will leave off a name, and let's put in a class. So we want to style this as a bootstrap button, and we'll give that a class of btn-danger to make that red. And we also give this a value equal to delete so that it has that text on the button. Now, actually for this action, we're not going to leave this empty. So this is going to be the route for officially deleting our post. And we haven't created that route yet, but let's just assume that we'll call it delete_post with the post ID included. So we can go ahead and fill this in, and we'll create that route in just a second. So I'll say URL for, and we will call that URL, or we'll call that route delete_post. And we are also going to pass in a post ID that we want to delete. So we'll pass in a post ID equal to post.id. Okay, so now let's go create that delete post route. Now, I know that this is a lot to do for this delete route, but there's nothing more frustrating than deleting things that you don't mean to. So you want to go through the effort of getting in good habits of being a little careful here, and that's what this whole process is about. Okay, so now let's go back to our routes and create a route for deleting a post. Now, this is going to be similar to our update route, at least the opening of it. So let's copy the beginning of that and paste this in. And also let's get that post query and the abort section of that as well and paste those in as well. And now let's update these values here. So instead of this being update, we want this to be delete, and we will change this route to be delete underscore post. Okay, and we are also only going to accept post requests for this route because we are only going to accept when they submit it from that modal. So let's get rid of the get request there and just leave this post. And now, after we verified that the post belongs to the current user, then we can simply delete the post and redirect them back to the home page. And we can do that just by saying db.session.delete. And we want to delete that post. And now we can commit that. So db.session.commit. And we can also add in a flashed message here. So I'm just going to copy this from our update route and paste this in. And we can say your post has been deleted. And now we can redirect them back to our home route. So we'll say return. And that's going to be a redirect URL for and the URL for the home route. So let's save that. Okay, so that should do it if we did everything correctly. So let's open this up in the browser and test this functionality. So let me make sure that this is still running and the web server needs to be restarted. So we'll restart that and pull back up our website here. Okay, so now let me create a new post, and then we'll go through the process of updating it and then deleting it. So I'll create a new post here, and I'll just say this title is this will be updated and then test content. So let's post that. We can see that it gets posted here on our homepage. So now let's click on that post, and we can see that we have the options to update or delete it. So now I'll update this post, and instead of updated, I'll say this will be deleted. So we can see that our update link worked. If I go back to the home page, then that is still there. So now let's see if we can delete this post. So I will click on delete, and it opens up our modal that says delete post. And if we click on this, then that should be a submit button that submits a post request to our delete post route with that post ID. So let's click that. And now we can see that we're redirected back to our home page, and it says your post has been deleted. So that seems to have all worked. Okay, so I think that is going to do it for this video. I hope that now you have a good idea for how you can add some kind of post to your site and also how to handle the updates and deletes of those posts. And in the next video, we'll learn how to paginate our posts so that we can efficiently grab a select number at a time. And also we'll learn how to create user-specific pages that only show their specific posts. But if you have any questions about what we covered in this video, then feel free to ask in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer those. And if you enjoy these tutorials and would like to support them, then there are several ways you can do that. The easiest way is to simply like the video and give it a thumbs up. And also, it's a huge help to share these videos with anyone who you think would find them useful. And if you have the means, you can contribute through Patreon, and there's a link to that page in the description section below. Be sure to subscribe for future videos, and thank you all for watching.